All right, well, let's go ahead and pray then. Almighty God, we give you great thanks again for this time to gather together and to share with one another in the reading of your word. We pray that you would open our hearts and our minds to the movement of your Holy Spirit here tonight. As iron sharpens iron, may we learn from one another and grow in our faith and grow in our love. Be with us and bless this time here now, and bless our conversation as we continue to learn what it means to be called disciples of Jesus. We lift these up to you in his name. Amen.
Mhm.
Well, if you remember when we last left David, he was in Ramah, Naioth, with Samuel, and Saul was trying to kill him. So, and Saul was left kind of a miserable, shaking, naked heap at the base of Ramah. And so now we're going to get into more of David and Jonathan's relationship in chapter 20. So, before we go, there any comments or questions on First Samuel thus far? I mean, we're pretty far into it, but is there anything that anybody would like to share or have a question about before we get into tonight?
Yes, obviously, we're seeing the disintegration of Saul
Mm-hmm.
throughout these chapters. It's interesting to watch, right down to stripping down and prophecy is the word they use. I guess that's a sign of madness.
The Spirit of God, I guess, came on him and incapacitated him as he was trying to kill David.
Well, I think Jonathan was the first to realize his father wasn't good at this
Mm.
because he struck out the battle on his own.
Right. Well, let's do chapter 20, verses 1 through 11, and we'll start there. I'd like to read.
I'll read it. Jonathan warns David. Then David fled from Naioth in Ramah and came and said before Jonathan, "What have I done? What is my guilt? And what is my sin before your father that he seeks my life?" And he said to him, "Far from it. You shall not die. Behold, my father does nothing, either great or small, without disclosing it to me. And why should my father hide this from me? It is not so." But David vowed again, saying, "Your father knows well that I have found favor in your eyes, and he thinks, do not let Jonathan know this, lest he be grieved. But truly, as the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, there is but a step between me and death." Then Jonathan said to David, "Whatever you say, I will do for you." David said to Jonathan, "Behold, tomorrow is the new moon, and I should not fail to sit at table with the king. But let me go, that I may hide myself in the field till the third day at evening. If your father misses me at all, then say, David earnestly asked leave of me to run to Bethlehem, his city, for there is a yearly sacrifice there for all the clan. If he says, good, it will be well with your servant. But if he is angry, then know that harm is determined by him. Therefore, deal kindly with your servant, for you have brought your servant into a covenant of the Lord with you. But if there is guilt in me, tell me yourself, for why should you bring me to your father? And Jonathan said, far be it from you, if I knew that it was determined by my father that harm should come to you, would I not tell you? Then David said to Jonathan, who will tell me if your father answers you roughly? And Jonathan said to David, come, let us go out into the field. Both ran out into the field.
All right, thank you. So, Jonathan is feeling this tension, I think, between his friendship with David and then, being Saul's son and his obligation to his father. So, is that something that we still kind of feel today between, our obligations to family versus maybe our obligations to others? Or how do you think that Jonathan is feeling right now in this passage?
Well, David has asked him to tell a made-up story to his father,
Hmm,
which I thought was interesting. And
oh yeah, say more about that.
what's that?
Say more about that. What do you-
Well,
Yeah,
here, the relationship between Jonathan and David is obviously growing. And it's primary, I think, perhaps to both of them. And he asked him to cover for me. I'm not going to be at dinner. And tell him that I had to go to Bethlehem. We're having a family service. And I just thought that was noteworthy. At the level that their relationship has matured, to where he's confiding in him, and he challenges him when he says, when Jonathan says, wouldn't I know if my father was after you? Well, chances are he may not want you to be aware of his plans for me.
yeah.
So it pretty well lays it out, sets the stage, if you will.
There's always that question, when is it okay to tell a lie? Never,
Mm.
never. But if he had gone to the dinner, he would have been killed by Saul.
Is it never?
Yeah.
Okay to tell a lie? No.
It becomes a question of, in the greater good, what's right. For example, if the SS stopped at Corey Ten Boom's house and said, are you hiding Jews here? Her answer was probably no.
Exactly.
And I think the lie was told for the benefit of the greater good.
There was,
I think you have to be careful with it.
yeah,
It's a slippery slope.
because that's ends justify the means, right? So, my Christian ethics class, we kind of broke it down. This was helpful to me, breaking down ethics into categories. And there were different, theologians, philosophers that had their point of view. And the one category was deontology, which means, rules-based ethics. It means there are certain rules and you need to follow them. The example that was given is never lie, always tell the truth. And I think, for example, Immanuel Kant was one of the theologians that pushed that, you should always tell the truth, no matter what. Doesn't matter. And then you have teleology, which is ends-based ethics. It means, what's the goal I'm trying to achieve? If the goal is good, then it doesn't matter what you do as long as you get to the goal, right? That's ends justify the means. But we can all think of some examples where that can go very badly. That, certain aspects of utilitarianism, I think lends itself to ends justify the means, and it's distasteful to me. And then there was another third category they talked about that was eritology, which is character ethics. And they said like Aristotle was somebody who really pushed this method of being an ethical person. And that was you develop certain virtues, right? So you might instead develop the virtue of honesty, which would still allow you, or integrity, which would allow you to lie when SS came knocking and you were hiding some juice in your house. But you would still generally be an honest person and let your yes be yes and no be no. So it was.
That's kind of what we have here.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
It was tell the truth by showing up and be killed, or tell a lie.
Well, I think David was frightened at this point. He's trying to reestablish with Jonathan his position where he's at, and are you still willing to cover for me? Are you still willing to help me? And if so, here's the plan. Go and tell your dad that I was called away, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm a little confused about why Saul would have even expected David to be there after all of this had gone down and trying to kill him.
Was he not reaccepted as part of Saul's retinue? The first instance is when he's playing the lyre and Saul hurls a spear at him and he dodges. But now he's back in the fold after Jonathan confronts him. And Saul promises that he is not going to harm David.
Well, then we had all of chapter 19, though, when Saul was pursuing David and sending people to kill him, and David escaped and ran away to Ramah. So he's
But in
coming
verse
from
23 of 19, and then he proceeded there to Ramah, and the Spirit of God came upon him also. So again, the Spirit of God came back upon him. So maybe there was a change of heart.
Yeah, but that's right before he then takes his clothes off and he's prophesying.
Well, I know that,
So,
but from 24 to verse 1, we don't get a picture of what was going on there in between.
I'm wondering if chapter 20, sort of like earlier in the book, chapter 20 is a retelling of how David had to run away. Because in chapter 19, he ran away when Michal, Saul's daughter, facilitated his escape by lying for him. And now in chapter 20, Jonathan is facilitating his escape by lying for him. So it's almost like it's a repeat story, but it's got Jonathan. So it's showing how both Michal and Jonathan were on David's side.
If David was one of the generals
Hmm.
and they're having this new moon festival, maybe that's why maybe it's because this was this big occasion and all the leaders had to be there.
Yeah.
That's just. My Bible says that each month of the year has they had special sacrifices. So it was a new moon festival sound pagan to me. That's why I looked at that, but it's Jewish calendar at the time. But that's one possibility is that that's why he was supposed to be there, not a big celebration. He would be missed if he wasn't there.
I mean, we're reading this, it makes it seem like everybody knows what's going on and that Saul is, after David, but maybe not. Maybe it wasn't public knowledge. And so, with this big public banquet, maybe David was expected to be there.
And maybe it was a festival too, where there's an unwritten moratorium on any violence. Who was it, said there'll be no killing? Gosh, we just studied it not too long ago. People did, he was done wrong and the people backed him up, said, we'll go after the guys that did this to you.
Well, that was, are you talking about, that was Saul?
Yeah,
So, yeah,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, so, and there'll be no killing. I don't know, maybe there was, and that was a festival they were
Is-
going into,
It
right?
certainly, well, it was after a battle,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
well,
He's certainly a changed man from that time when he said, we're not gonna kill those people that were against me, you know. To now, I gotta kill David. Cause I was also wondering, you know, how does Jonathan not know that his dad is
Right.
David? But maybe, you know, in chapter 19 is not as public as we think it is. Maybe it's not as well known.
we don't.
That's-
Stay there.
Oh, I think you're muted, Norma.
Oh, am I now okay?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Maybe I'm using today's standards, but everybody seems to know what's going on. There doesn't seem to be too many secrets around people. And I just found it interesting that David and Jonathan were such good friends and they were around, but nobody talked about or told him anything about his dad throwing spears at him. I mean, I just that's a pretty overt action
Yeah.
for people not to see or hear or gossip about something like that. I just was surprised. But maybe you're right.
Yeah.
It's just not that public.
Well, and again, maybe it could be that chapter 20 and chapter 19 are two different versions of David's escape. And they're just told one right after the other.
I wondered how aware Saul was of their true relationship feelings. It's like they're brotherly types, that they have that close of a connection. But did Saul realize that? So that's another thing that I thought might be important to know.
Well, I think I think, initially Saul did tell Jonathan to kill David, but then Jonathan asked Saul not to kill David. And he, made it seem like he wouldn't do it. So, now I think we're going sort of, now David knows that Saul's trying to kill him. It's kind of that, now it's like, hey, your dad's trying to kill me. And Jonathan, I think, probably didn't believe him because he thought he had his dad's word that he wasn't going to try to kill him.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was thinking too, is, and that could be,
He wants his dad to not be the person that
Yes.
killed David,
mm,
that he, it is his father. I mean,
that's
you want to think the best of your father, right?
That's a really good point. How many times have we heard about, people who a family member has done something terrible and their first reaction is that couldn't have happened. It couldn't have been them.
Mhm.
That's not true. And it makes you think about who to believe in those kinds of situations when we hear about an accusation.
I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I think going back, Chris, to that very first question you asked is, it's an interesting family dynamic.
Mhm.
I think at this point, Saul is David's father-in-law, right?
Yes.
And then, so, Jonathan then is a brother-in-law, and then you have Michal, David's wife. It's an interesting family dynamic where Saul wants to preserve his kingdom, and assuming Jonathan would then take over, but Jonathan doesn't seem to, well, I wouldn't say, I guess I was going to say he doesn't care, but I think he realizes that David should be the, the next king and not him. And so, Jonathan, how does Jonathan say that to his dad, saying, hey, I'm not the next person that really needs to take in line. You need to give it to David. Look at everything he's done for you. How is Jonathan going to have that conversation with Saul? Right? He did a little bit early on, which was brought up. So I think it's interesting, family dynamics. It gets, even in our day and age now with technology, it gets really hard to make everyone happy, I guess. Especially during holiday times, people are going
Yep.
all different directions, right?
Yep.
So I was discussing with my sister who lives here. She lives in Westerville, about Thanksgiving, and they all came over to our house last year for Thanksgiving. And so we're supposedly going to maybe go over to her house for Thanksgiving, but she has 2 of her kids now are actually dating people and are possibly bringing them to the house for Thanksgiving. So we are not going to get together because it might be too overwhelming for the dates to have that much of a family, right? So
That's
So
it
you
happened
check
too.
yeah, I was like, yeah, I get that,
Chickens.
so so family dynamics, right? And obviously, nobody's going to be killed in our family over not seeing somebody, but David was probably expected to be at this monthly ceremony, because he is the son-in-law of Saul, and so Saul expected him. And what if instead of covering up, David had confided in Jonathan, but had gone to the meal, and Jonathan, knowing the suspicions that David had, what would have happened at that dinner table? If
David would have got to the dinner table.
if he would have got to the dinner table, but yeah, let's say he gets to the dinner table, right? How's Saul gonna take him out without Jonathan jumping in the middle, and you having a big fight at this ceremony or something? I don't know. I just
Poison food might have happened.
yeah. So yeah, I think it makes it's an interesting situation. I agree what was said earlier as far as the telling a lie or covering up. In this case, you're trying to save somebody's life, so it makes sense to me.
A commentary that I was consulting here goes into quite a bit of business about the length of the discussion between Jonathan and David in the field, about how this was the ultimate bonding of them, because at that time, Jonathan is aware that he is losing his inheritance to the house of David. And yet he signs up to support David in any way he can. And it's a nice piece they've written, and I won't read it, but it talks about it, this interview for dramatic interest and moral beauty stands unrivaled in the records of human friendship. I mean, they really, and if you think about it, it was a huge moment in the development of David and his relationship with Jonathan and Saul's family.
Well, but what we're not told is maybe Jonathan didn't want to be king. Maybe he's looking at this as a way out.
Let's go ahead and read about that.
Yeah.
That moment there. So verses 12 through 23 here. They go out into the field. Would somebody read that for us?
I can read.
Thank you.
Then Jonathan told David, I pledge by the Lord God of Israel that I will question my father by this time tomorrow or on the third day. If he seems favorable toward David, I will definitely send word and make sure you know. But if my father intends to harm you, then may the Lord deal harshly with me, Jonathan, and worse still, if I don't tell you right away so that you can escape safely. May the Lord be with you as he once was with my father. If I remain alive, be loyal to me. But if I die, don't ever stop being loyal to my household, once the Lord has eliminated all of David's enemies from the earth. If Jonathan's name is also eliminated, then the Lord will seek retribution from David. So Jonathan again made a pledge to David because he loved David as much as himself. Tomorrow is the festival of the new moon. Jonathan told David, you will be missed because your seat will be empty. The day after tomorrow, go all the way to the spot where you hid on the day of the incident and stay close to that mount. On the third day, I will shoot an arrow to the side of the mount as if aiming at a target. Then I'll send the servant boy saying, go retrieve the arrow. If I yell to the boy, hey, the arrow is on this side of you, get it. Then you can come out because it will be safe for you. There won't be any trouble. I make a pledge on the Lord's life. But if I yell to the young man, hey, the arrow is past you, then run for it because the Lord has sent you away. Either way, the Lord is witness between us forever regarding the promise we made to each other. So David hid himself in the field.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. So there's a couple things going on here. You have the plan, right? Of how Jonathan's gonna let him know whether Saul wants to kill David or not. David already knows, but but then there's also this covenant that Jonathan makes with David. What do you make of that?
And take care of his family if something happens to him. Well, isn't that what a good friend would do?
It's not what a king would do that takes over the throne from the previous king, not in these times.
It's true.
I think that's significant to point out that, you know, it was very, very standard if you took the throne to eliminate all of your opposition. It's just what they did. And so this is what Jonathan is asking of David in a covenant format is when you take the throne. So there again, he's putting his full backing behind David. He knows the spirit, you know, I like that your translation said this, Carol, that the Spirit of God once was with my father. So it's that recognition, you know, Jonathan recognizes Spirit of God's not with dad anymore. It's with you, David. So when you become king, I know you have to kill everybody in my dad's family. Can you please spare me and my descendants?
And it doesn't tell us whether David agreed to that or not.
Well, it says Jonathan made David swear by his love for him. So I don't think it's not in quotation marks, but I think it's maybe implied that he did.
Mine was
and-
that he made a pledge to David.
Hmm.
It doesn't say that he made David swear.
Oh, it's
Well, my footnotes say that Jonathan asked David to keep a promise to treat his children kindly in the future. Years later, David took great pains to fulfill this promise. He invited Jonathan's son,
should have.
Mephibosheth, into his palace to live.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. I remember reading that.
So David lived up or honored his agreement there, his promise.
2 Samuel chapter 9 is where that is, where David seeks out Mephibosheth and brings him into his house to make sure
Well
that
said.
he's taken care of. Yeah.
I said, and Jonathan had David reaffirm his oath out of the love for him because he loved him as he loved himself.
Mhm.
And there's that oath again,
Mhm.
which, in chapter 19, Saul listened to Jonathan and took an oath that he wouldn't take, he wouldn't put David to death, but
Mhm.
we know how well that went, so. I mean, but there again, that was Saul's promise to, or his oath to Jonathan was, I won't try to kill David.
Mhm. Yeah.
He's stretching this one a little bit, but I think Jonathan's kind of saying, remember me when you come into your kingdom.
Mhm.
My footnote for chapter 17 says that love again expresses political loyalty.
Yes. Yeah. There's a word that's used throughout this chapter, chesed, which has that various translations, steadfast faithfulness, steadfast love, loyalty, and loving kindness. And that is what's being used to describe the relationship of David and Jonathan. So yeah, I think it goes beyond just love, but it's like a lasting commitment. It's loyalty. You might, uh, it's a very strong bond that they have.
Going back a while back, you mentioned that when he gave him his clothes, that was a big, that was
Yeah.
very significant.
Yeah.
So this is just reaffirming what I've already said.
And yet here's David. He was just minding his own business out in the field, taking care of his father's sheep. And now look. But God's with him, so.
Mhm.
It's Goliath's fault.
No, it's not Goliath's fault.
Yeah,
No, he was pulled out of that field before Goliath.
Sherry, you mentioned the oaths, and it just, kind of made me think about the contrast between David and Saul. And, Saul, he made this reckless oath, way back when about with his army and, was going to keep it, but ended up not because it was a reckless oath. And then he made, in chapter 19, an oath and quickly broke it. And it just made me think, Saul is very much just not a person of integrity.
Mm-mm.
He may have started out that way, but he really wasn't a person of integrity. Whereas David seems to have a lot more integrity. Not always, we still remember the Bathsheba story, but certainly in most of his dealings, and later on in his fulfillment of this oath that he made to Jonathan. The other thing this chapter is establishing that it has been established throughout this book so far is that David is innocent. There is absolutely no reason why Saul should be trying to kill him other than Saul's jealousy. So you see in verse 8 where David says, if there is guilt in me, kill me yourself. Why should you bring me to your father? So it's kind of again, we don't know, maybe there were people at the time who said, well, David, is a traitor. David is treasonous and rebelled against the king or something like that. So this story is reaffirming that David did nothing to warrant Saul's anger. Cause I'm sure there were people who, after it all was said and done, there were people who talked about, oh, David took the throne away and. When you read First and Second Samuel, it really makes the case that David was God's chosen king and came into the throne legitimately. Saul drove him away, was trying to kill him. All the people, Saul's kids, Saul's own son, the heir to the throne, recognized David as the next king. So you can almost read Samuel as a polemical document in favor of David, House of David. Should we read about the dinner? Let's see what happens. Okay, so let's read verses 24 to 34 then. Somebody like to read that.
So David hid in the field, and when the new moon came, the king sat down to eat food. And the king sat on his seat as usual, the seat by the wall. Then Jonathan rose up, and Abner sat down by Saul's side, but David's place was empty. Nevertheless, Saul did not speak anything that day, for he thought, it's an accident. He's not clean. Surely he's not clean. And it came about the next day, the second day of the new moon, that David's place was empty. So Saul said to Jonathan, his son, why has the son of Jesse not come to the meal either yesterday or today? Jonathan then answered Saul, David earnestly asked leave of me to go to Bethlehem. For he said, please let me go, since our family has a sacrifice in the city, and my brother has commanded me to attend. And now, if I have found favor in your sight, please let me get away, that I may see my brothers. For this reason, he has not come to the king's table. Then Saul's anger burned against Jonathan, and he said to him, you son of a perverse, rebellious woman, do I not know that you are choosing the son of Jesse to your own shame and to the shame of your mother's nakedness? For as long as the son of Jesse lives on the earth, neither you nor your kingdom will be established. Therefore now send and bring him to me, for he surely must die. But Jonathan answered Saul his father and said to him, why should he be put to death? What has he done? Then Saul hurled his spear at him to strike him down. So Jonathan knew that his father had decided to put David to death. I don't know what his clue was, but then Jonathan arose from the table in fierce anger and did not eat food on the second day of the new moon, for he was grieved over David because his father had dishonored him.
I like the way mine has the second part of verse 31 worded. Now have him brought to me because he's a dead man.
The Hebrew literally reads son of death.
What does your verse 30 say? I'm interested.
Mine's
In your
different.
version there.
At that, Saul got angry at Jonathan. You son of a stubborn, rebellious woman, he said. Do you think I don't know how you allied yourself with Jesse's son? Shame on you and on the mother who birthed you. Doesn't
Yeah.
think much of
It,
women.
it,
I don't know what the nakedness part.
I think the word is, I would have to get out the Hebrew, but it's a reference to the mother's genitalia, which implies, that Jonathan has been shameful since birth. Since he came out of his mother's womb, basically. He's saying you've been ashamed since you were born, is basically the
Yeah, he didn't like it when Jonathan
meaning
went
of
out
that.
into battle without his permission, and now he's friending his enemy.
Well, Saul was so angry. I mean, he's just out of control because he's gonna kill his own
He
son.
threw the spear at Jonathan that
Yeah,
time.
with the intent to strike him down.
He must have been a very lousy shot.
3 times.
One person.
Not like David with the sling, right?
He's very impulsive.
You
Mhm.
need to see Larry for glasses.
Then Jonathan and David are quick.
I think David's excuse for being gone is probably a reasonable one if it was true. And it
Yeah.
might be that Saul was made even madder because David went to Jonathan and asked for permission to leave and didn't go to Saul. Saul might have thought, well, he should have come to me to get out of the dinner.
That's a good point.
I think Saul's impulsive in his thoughts and, it's like you said, the lack of integrity. I mean, it's throwing out oaths that you can't keep. It's, getting angry and throwing the spear. I mean, very impulsive. He's just becoming more and more impulsive in everything that he does.
Throw a spear very well.
Cannot throw a spear very well. Yeah.
That's what I said. He needed to go see you and get glasses. He couldn't see his subject.
One thing that my commentary pointed out, I would not have noticed if it didn't point out, Saul can't even say David's name anymore.
Once.
He calls him the son of
Son of
Jesse.
Jesse.
That was interesting. He's just, yeah.
He added a little part in what he told his father
Mm,
when he said that David told him his brother has ordered him.
right.
He embellished.
Maybe he thought that would,
Yeah, make it sound.
make a difference. I don't know.
Well, in verse 32, Jonathan asks his dad, why does he need to be slain? What did he do? And Saul never gave him an answer. That's when he threw the javelin at him.
I think this is the whole point too of the chapter. One of the major points of the chapter. It's why David comes to Jonathan in the beginning. Because I'm sitting there thinking, why did David come back? Why did he decide to come to Jonathan? Maybe because he wanted to see his friend and clear the air. But now his first question to Jonathan, what have I done? Why is he trying to kill me? What did I do? This happened to me in not this exact thing, but in second grade, first or second grade, I got pulled aside and made to sit out for recess, which to a second grader is like the worst thing that can happen to you,
Terrible.
right?
Yes.
And I had no idea what I'd done. They never told me.
It's not very good punishment.
I was sitting there sobbing. I didn't know what it was that I did. They wouldn't tell me. And now that I think back on it, I think I had accidentally held up my middle finger, and I didn't know that was I didn't know what that meant at that age. I think I was playing around and I didn't know, and maybe somebody went and told the teacher, but I didn't know. I didn't know what I'd done. Well, what did I do? David, obviously feeling a lot worse than I did in second grade. What did I do? Why is he trying to kill me?
Your teachers weren't trying to kill you, at least.
Right. Felt like it.
That's a second grade.
Being held out of recess is pretty close to the same thing.
Yeah.
So we're.
Yeah. So. But there at the end of verse 34, it says that Jonathan's father had disgraced him, which I would certainly agree with that. But from Saul's point of view, Jonathan was the disgrace.
And Saul might even be angry from the standpoint of In verse 29, where and my brother has commanded me to attend, Saul's probably saying, who is this guy that he commands my people?
Mm.
And then Jonathan going ahead and granting him permission. All of that put together probably caused him to throw the spear.
I will say, we do get the why in verse 31. I mean, that's the explicit answer right there. As long as David lives,
You'll never be
you're
king.
not gonna be the king.
And like Carol said, maybe he didn't want to be king.
You already knew that.
He knew he wasn't going to be, yeah, but maybe he was fine with that too.
Well, I think Saul realizes that too, and he says, do I not know that you have chosen the son of Jesse? And that's why he thinks it's shameful. He recognizes his own son as giving up the throne, giving it over to David. And he doesn't want to let go of it. Or he can't let go.
Was it not Samuel that designated David to be king in the presence of Saul?
No,
Not in the
Saul
presence
wasn't
of Saul.
there.
Saul wasn't there. But
And actually, it was God that designated him. He
Yeah.
kept telling him, no, not this one, not this one.
Through Samuel.
Mhm.
But Samuel did tell Saul, you're not going to be king anymore. God's going to pick somebody else. And so Saul did not know who that was. David was anointed in secret. But by this point, Saul's figured it out.
It's,
And he's basically going against God. I mean, he knows what Samuel told him, that God's taken the kingdom away from you, given it to somebody else. And he's choosing to fight it. Seems strange to me, but
Well, I think looking in our society today, people hang on to stuff of the world to what avail? What good does it do them? Anything on this planet you can't take with you.
nothing physical.
And they just
I mean,
wanna
this is
hang
even
on to this power or position or wealth or
Too. Yep.
whatever.
This is even like the drug addict, right?
Mm,
I mean, he's even acting just like the heroin addicts or in the sense that it's all just falling apart, right? I mean, he
Mhm.
thinks he can just get it all, right? I mean, this is exactly what you see with the people who have addictions too, is he's just got this power that he's just not gonna let go of. He's gonna destroy everything around him to hang on to that. I mean, you still see this in this day and age.
House of cards has fallen down and he's desperately trying to set them back up again.
Yeah, it's interesting, and Jesus had all the power, and what was he? A servant.
That's a very good point to make, that, you know, God models for us what to do with unlimited power. Give it away freely.
And I've seen people get into positions. I've seen it in the fraternity. They get into some position where they have some authority, and man, all of a sudden it just right to their head, and they think everybody should serve them. And I just said, man, you need to get a hobby. Yeah, you're there to serve, not to be served.
But like in this story, to me, Jonathan is the one that's leading the most godly life, right? I mean, he's the one protecting his friend, who's loving someone like himself, who's out there, you know, so to me, I would say, you know, if I looked at this story and you said, who do you think is really exemplifying God or Jesus or the Christian way of life? I think it's Jonathan. I think that's what I look at in this story is kind of the unsung hero in all of this, you know, having to give up and say, I'm gonna give up the power too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the one that's doing that, so.
Yeah, he's giving up the throne, giving up the power to make way for God's kingdom, God's chosen king.
Having to go against his dad.
Well, that's what we're told to do. Give up this world. Give up all this stuff.
For God's chosen king.
Follow me.
For us, it's Jesus, right? Let's get the end of the chapter, shall we? Verses 35 to the end there, 42. Who'd like to read for us?
I'll take a shot at that.
Thank you.
In the morning, Jonathan went out into the field to the appointment with David, and with him a little lad. And he said to his lad, run and find the arrows which I shoot. As the lad ran, he shot an arrow beyond him. And when the lad came to the place of the arrow which Jonathan had shot, Jonathan called after the lad and said, is not the arrow beyond you? And Jonathan called after the lad, hurry, make haste, stay not. So Jonathan's lad gathered up the arrows and came to his master. But the lad knew nothing, only Jonathan and David knew the matter. And Jonathan gave his weapons to his lad and said to him, go and carry them to the city. And as soon as the lad had gone, David rose from beside the stone heap and fell on his face to the ground and bowed 3 times. And they kissed one another and wept with one another until David recovered himself. Then Jonathan said to David, go in peace, for as much as we have sworn, both of us, in the name of the Lord, saying, the Lord shall go between me and you, and between my descendants and your descendants forever. And he rose and departed, and Jonathan went into the city.
Thank you.
This is interesting. Why'd they go through all the arrow thing if you could just go up and talk to them?
I was thinking the same thing, yeah. He did all of that subterfuge and then. Well,
That is an interesting thought.
my commentary doesn't have an answer to that either. It doesn't even mention it, but I thought the same thing.
Jonathan's out there shooting the arrows, and should Saul happen to see him, what are you doing out there on target practice?
Yeah, maybe it was just an
Yeah,
excuse to go out in the field.
Maybe it
Yeah.
was a ruse just in case somebody happened to see.
But they still had the secret code of, you know,
Yeah.
the arrows are beyond you.
Right.
Maybe Jonathan expected that that was gonna be it and David was gonna leave, but David couldn't leave without saying goodbye. Maybe David was gonna risk being seen so that he could give his friend one last.
Well, he was hiding behind a mindset of stone.
Mhm.
Instead of mound.
Yeah, he was hiding behind something.
Yeah.
Well, But- we assumed Jonathan was a better shot than Saul, so you know, he wasn't gonna hit the kid.
I would say in those days, they were probably pretty proficient with the bow.
Except for Saul.
Well, that's a spear.
Oh.
There's a difference between a
Yes, there
spear,
is.
when I mean a bow, an arrow. You can aim those a little better.
The last thing that Jonathan says to David is, you know, remember what we swore to each other. The Lord shall be between me and you and between my descendants and your descendants forever.
I have a cousin. I had an aunt and uncle that were missionaries. And you're younger than me. And his name is Jonathan. I'm sure it's.
Your cousin's name is Jonathan because of this story?
Yeah.
Because they
My
were
aunt-
missionaries, yeah.
My aunt's name was Sarah. You know, pretty Bible names.
Mhm.
Reading this story, some insight into why they picked Jonathan as a name.
Mm. Mhm.
Does that agreement between them show up anyplace else other than what we read and that showed up in second Samuel chapter 9? Does Jonathan show up anywhere else with Samuel or with David and that honors this agreement?
Not that I'm aware.
I mean, I don't remember after this, I don't remember reading anything about Jonathan.
Eventually.
Well, yeah. Jonathan is killed
Ah, okay.
in battle. I don't think Jonathan and David meet again. I think this is the last time they meet.
Yeah.
And when Jonathan is killed and when David learns about Jonathan's death, he's deeply, deeply grieved, of course, because this was his very close friend.
Right.
Uh,
Okay.
So no, I'm not aware of anything else other than David's action to protect Jonathan's descendants.
Okay.
But I also don't think, Jonathan is, a part of Saul's hunting party after David either. So. What is interesting to me is Jonathan is for David. Jonathan makes this oath with David. Jonathan helps David escape. And then Jonathan goes back to his dad's house.
Where else was he gonna go?
So, well, there again it's that tension between his love for David and his obligation to his father, even though his father just tried to kill him. That he still has familial obligations. Which I don't know if I would have gone back home after dad,
I agree.
You've never thrown a spear at me, so I'm
No.
thankful for that, but.
No,
There's always tomorrow, huh?
I would probably be worse shot than Saul. I'd probably end up stabbing myself would be
But you're a pretty good golfer.
that I can do. Thank you, Norma. Hmm.
Well, I don't think we have time for chapter 21. So that worked out. Is there any other questions or comments on chapter 20? I think if there's anything else that out here. I think we covered it pretty well. Like I said, I didn't think we'd take the whole hour and a half tonight.
Bowing 3 times. The sign of submission and respect.
Bowing 3 times is a sign of submission and respect.
David was bowing to John.
Yeah.
The, the 3 times.
There, what, oh, go ahead.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I mean, I was just gonna say, I think I really enjoyed the story. Again, thinking modern day times. People come into your lives for different reasons, but to read about like their friendship, I think people come into your lives for various reasons, but to be able to read about a friendship like that, I mean, friendships like that are very special. And the fact that they were there for each other, I think just kind of makes you think about their own friendships. And as I was reading this, it was sort of timely because this weekend I took my daughter Lauren to see Michigan State because she got accepted there and she's not going to go there, but that's fine. But my college roommate met us up there, and we didn't know each other before we got paired as roommates, and still best friends to this day. And I mean, it just anytime I get together with her, very just soothing to my soul. So just kind of as I was reading this, I was like, those friendships are very important, and I think they can really do a lot for people. So I think just reading that kind of made me think about how important friendships can be and why people come into their lives at certain times.
I was just thinking a minute ago, after reading that, I read this a few times earlier in my life, but when I was in college, I joined a fraternity, and the nickname of it, and this was at Otterbein, you were there, so you might know, nickname of our fraternity was Jonda, because it was supposed to take the first 3 letters of Jonathan's name and the first 2 letters of David and put it together to show that as a good as the example really of what loyalty and friendship
Great.
are really all about,
Mm-hmm.
which is supposed to rub off into the members. And I haven't, this is the first time I've been out of college for something like 60 years. But it's the first time I happened to think of that as we were doing this, because I remember them talking about it, but I never really paid much attention
Yeah.
as to, because when you take an oath or something, that's a pretty big deal,
Mm-hmm.
and it can't be broken.
Mm-hmm.
And this oath wasn't broken. And I think it's a good example, to me anyway, of what that's kind of all about.
Mm-hmm.
Just an opinion.
Yeah.
Well, your oath should not be broken.
Mm-hmm.
It can be broken, but it should not be. But as we talked before, when you would take an oath before God, that's serious business. And
Yeah, you mentioned that, I don't know, in one of our meetings, may have been this one, I don't remember that, Bill, when you brought that up a couple of times, and I think it fits right in here.
yeah, exactly.
There's an interesting statement in my Bible that states that Jonathan went forth and decided to have this meeting. And he considered it safe enough to risk this farewell meeting because he longed to have that meeting, since this was probably the last time they would be together. Beautiful thing. sad but beautiful.
I did want to pull one more thing for was, mind you here in my commentary that Jonathan and David at this point in the story, we know the end of the story. We know that David sits on the throne. We know how it ends. But at this point, they don't know the end of the story. And so even though, you know, Saul is hurling spears at Jonathan, he still chooses David. He still chooses his friend and to back his friend when, for all he knows, you know, this could end very poorly. Saul could consolidate his power and have all of his enemies, including Jonathan, executed. But Jonathan believes in David, but more than that, Jonathan believes in God's vision for the future of Israel, his nation, his people. And what made me think of that was this paragraph here, where he says, this story points to God as guarantor of loyalty. Over and over again, we're reminded that loyalty in human relationships finds its full meaning as commitment made in the name of the Lord. And it's trust that the future is God's future that makes pain endurable. It's the hope that God's future will come that allows us to risk challenging the vested interests and human cowardice that undermine loyalty and love. So Jonathan could choose against his own self-interest and his father's restricted vision of the future because his horizon was God's future. And beyond these events, Jonathan could see God's future for Israel. And David could respond in loyal commitment, even to Jonathan's descendants, and trust that God's future would come. So, yeah, all the last sentence too. Those who would offer loyal friendship in the midst of life's struggles give up self-interest and risk painful struggle, not only for the sake of the friend, but also for the future of God's kingdom that such loyalty makes possible.
It's loyalty, friendship, and also brotherhood, I think, is part of that too. In a sense, Jonathan and David were brothers, maybe not blood brothers, but in another way of looking at it, and wanting the same thing, that, you know, as David is king for Israel. It's pretty, I don't know, to me, it's pretty deep.
It would be very, very difficult for, I keep thinking about how Jonathan said that God was with David and used to be with my dad.
Mhm.
You know, that would be a tough thing,
Mhm.
you know, to be perceptive enough to even know that that's happening, but it was in a tough place. I don't know if I mean, perceive that. I mean, there's,
Especially if, I mean, you don't know, maybe he grew up thinking that the Spirit of God was going to pass from his dad to him.
Truly.
But he's recognized it's passed to David, yeah. And his response to David is the complete opposite of Saul's. Saul's is to double down, and Jonathan's is to let go.
But perhaps the Spirit of God didn't miss Jonathan.
No, I don't think so. All right. Well, let's move on to prayer concern.